Happy to be a part of today's debate. It's part of our mission to be a resource for local business. That includes both the corporate C-suite as well as small business owners. We hope that today's candidates will address the issues that affect these businesses the most, the infrastructure they need, the rising economy that we hope to see, as well as the racial tensions that have affected all businesses. We hope that you use today's debate to make a wise choice come next month's election. Enjoy the debate.
From Local 12 News, the Cincinnati Business Courier and the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber present the Ohio 1st District Congressional Debate. Here's tonight's moderator, Kyle Inskeep.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's debate. For the next hour, Democrat Kate Schroeder and Republican Steve Chabot will be discussing many issues affecting not only Ohio's 1st District, but really the entire tri-state. We're going to meet the candidates and talk more about tonight's format in just a moment. But first, I'd like to introduce the panelists who will be the ones asking the questions tonight. They are Cincinnati Business Courier reporter and columnist Chris Wederick. Jill Meyer is the president and CEO of the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber, and Eddie Cohen is the CEO of the Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio. There have been changes over the years, so this is what Ohio's 1st District currently looks like. It's comprised of Western Hamilton County, a swath of Northern and Northeast Hamilton County, and all of Warren County. Because of COVID-19, the traditional opening handshake is not being observed tonight, but we do want to thank Kate Schroeder and Steve Chabot for being with us and taking part in this exchange of ideas. And we want to tell you a little bit about both of them. Kate Schroeder is 43 years old. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Indiana University and an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. She's been a member of the Cincinnati Board of Health and worked for the Clinton Health Access Initiative. Ms. Schroeder, along with her husband John, live with their daughter and son in Clifton. Steve Chabot is 67 years old. He has an undergraduate degree from the College of William and Mary and a law degree from Northern Kentucky University. Mr. Chabot is completing his 12th term in Congress and before that served on Cincinnati City Council and as a Hamilton County Commissioner. He and his wife Donna have 2 adult children and a grandchild. They live in Westwood. Tonight's debate will focus primarily on 3 topics: transportation, the economy, and inclusion. The panelists will ask a question, after which the first candidate has 60 seconds for a response. The other candidate then has 90 seconds for rebuttal. Then the first candidate has 30 seconds as well for rebuttal. Each candidate will also have 2 minutes for a closing statement. The order of who gets the first question and the final closing statement was determined by a coin toss prior to tonight's broadcast. Ms. Schroeder won that coin toss. She will get first crack at the question posed now by Chris Wederick of the Cincinnati Business Courier. Chris, the floor is yours.
Ms. Schroeder, Vice President Biden's tax plan calls for raising the corporate income tax from 21% to 28% and taxes on individuals with more than $400,000, as well as some other increases. The Tax Foundation has estimated the plan would reduce the gross domestic product by 1.5%. If you and Biden are elected, would you vote for that plan as a member of the House?
Thanks, Chris, and thanks to Channel 12, to the Business Courier, to the Urban League, and to the Chamber for having us here this evening, and thanks to the Congressman for joining me in this debate, and especially to all the viewers who are taking the time to tune in. My view on tax policies is that taxing should be fair. It should be fair to everyone. We should all play by the same set of rules. My primary focus is ensuring that we are not increasing taxes on middle-class families and on working families. I think we have a situation in our country right now where we have a president who pays $750 in taxes, and that is way less than somebody working at Kroger's down here as a cashier and pays more than double that. And so I think we do need fair taxes. I think we can look at corporate taxes, same policy there. It needs to be a fair tax policy, and we need to tax the minimum necessary to get the resources to run our government and provide the basic services that a government needs to provide.
Time, Mr. Chabot.
Thank you very much. First, I need to clear up the record. We have 2 grandchildren, not just one. Now, our daughter had a little granddaughter a while back, so we're really proud of that. And I want to also welcome all the folks at home that are watching this evening, as well as the moderator and the other folks that are involved in this, and Ms. Schroeder as well. There's one clear difference on taxes here. I'm glad you asked the question. I'm for lower taxes and have voted that way consistently over my entire career. In fact, I was called our community's anti-tax crusader. And I've stuck to that over the years. I think your taxes ought to go down, not up. My opponent is for higher taxes. In fact, she's for the radical leftist policy called the Green New Deal. Not only is she for it, but she says nothing else matters. Her words, not mine. And if you look at what's in there, taxes are not just going to go up, they're going to grow up in the stratosphere. It's been estimated that the American people are going to have to pay about a 70% tax rate. Yes, 70%. And that the average family's taxes are going to go up probably to $70,000 in the first year alone. This thing's going to cost $93 trillion, so obviously taxes are going to have to go up. So that Green New Deal, I mean, that's AOC's policies. These are the left-wingers, it's Bernie Sanders. She's in their camp on this in virtually every issue. Now, I voted for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which lowered taxes. The Democrats like to say, oh, that was just for the rich. Wealthier folks did get some, but everybody got their tax cut. $2,400 in this community, average family.
Ms. Schroeder, you have 30 seconds now.
Thank you. I do not support the Green New Deal. The congressman knows that, and yet he continues to say that to intentionally mislead folks. It's interesting that he says that he is not for raising taxes. In fact, during his time in Congress, he has increased our national debt by $20 trillion, and he's actually voted for a tax increase that increased it by $2 trillion, specifically giving tax breaks to the wealthy and to large corporations. 83% went to the wealthy and large corporations.
All right, time now to move on to our next question. And our next question is from Mr. Shabbat from Jill Meyer, President and CEO of the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber.
Mr. Shabbat, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted every sector of our economy. What more do you believe needs to be done to support businesses through the pandemic? And what would you do, should you be elected, to ensure that businesses are able to safely and effectively reopen and remain open?
Well, COVID has dramatically impacted our community and communities all over the country. We lost over 200,000 of our fellow citizens. We passed the CARES Act, and I supported that. One of the things that's in there was the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. That directly helps, especially small businesses, and about half the people who work in America work for a small business. I'm the lead Republican, former chair of the House Small Business Committee, and that's how I was instrumental in crafting that legislation and implementing and make sure we got our fair share here in our community. And in fact, not only do we get our fair share, there are 16 congressional districts in Ohio. Our district received more money, almost $3 billion. More small businesses received loans, almost 17,000 small businesses. And most importantly, 250,000 people got their jobs were saved. It's incredible to me that my opponent just said that she's not for the Green New Deal. We've got her on video. Watch television. There's an ad with her saying she's for the Green New Deal. Not only is she for it, it's the only thing that matters. Her words, not mine.
Ms. Schroeder, you have 90 seconds now.
Thank you. I think we are in such a difficult time as a community and as a country right now with the pandemic and the economic recession that we're going through. And one of the important things that I think about as someone who's worked in business and in healthcare is that these are not two separate things. A lot of people try to paint, you're either for the public health response or for the economy, and these are interrelated. The stronger our public health response, the sooner and more safely we can reopen the economy. So we need to be doing both at once. And to support our businesses, I do believe we need to dramatically invest. We need additional relief. The congressman has voted twice against additional relief while our community is suffering here. We need support to our state and local governments. We need support to our businesses in extending PPP and extending unemployment insurances. And also, I've got a 5- and 7-year-old that haven't been to school in person in 6 months. Our public schools are all virtual in Cincinnati, while private schools are open in our wealthy suburban schools. And we need relief from our government to help our schools open safely. Women are falling out of the workplace because of this. 1 in 4 women have either left their job or had to alter it because of childcare. I have a family member who is being cited by HR because she can't keep up with her work because of her childcare needs. And we need representation in Congress that understands that people are suffering now and need support so that our businesses can thrive and continue to move forward.
Well, we also need people who are telling the truth, especially when there are elected officials. And to now say that she's not for the Green New Deal, I mean, that's absolutely, I can't believe that she would make that comment that she's not for it. She's on videotape saying that she supports it. Oh yes, she supports it. And not only that, it's the only thing that matters. So jobs don't matter, Social Security doesn't matter, how high taxes don't matter. The only thing that matters to her is the Green New Deal. Now she denies that she's even for it. It's incredible.
Eddie Cohen from the Urban League has our question now for Ms. Schroeder.
Thank you. Ms. Schroeder, staying on education, it is clear that a strong education system is critical to ensure that we are investing in the workforce of tomorrow. How do you believe the federal government should engage to help children, families, and communities, especially as the pandemic has drawn attention to the disparate impact on children as schools work to reopen or engage students online?
Thank you, Eddie. I really appreciate that question. As I mentioned earlier, having a kindergartner and second grader in Cincinnati public schools, and knowing that our public schools here in Cincinnati, we have a child poverty rate north of 40%, and those disparities are increasing as our schools remain virtual, particularly for young kids. I've got a kindergartner. It is really hard to do kindergarten virtually, and our teachers are doing their absolute best, but they need the support of their government to do this. I believe the role of the federal government is to ensure that every child and every person in this country has a fair shot. It's not to guarantee success and happiness, it's giving them a fair shot. And a big part of that is investing in our education system. I believe in universal pre-K. What we've done here in Cincinnati, that needs to be something we look at nationally. We also need to invest in higher education, making it more affordable, looking at loan forgiveness, expanding Pell Grants, and looking at vocational degrees, and also access to technical degrees so anyone can pursue those that wants to.
Time. Mr. Shabbat, you now have 90 seconds.
Well, education is absolutely critical to us as a society, to this community, communities all over America. I'm a former school teacher myself. I taught the 7th and 8th grade at St. Joseph's School right down the street from Taft High School. It's been quite a few years ago, but it was one of the most interesting experiences of my life. And I did lose one election in Congress back in '08, and I was I was teaching in the political science department up at UC for a couple of semesters up there, and that was a unique experience. And not only am I a parent, but I'm a grandparent. So we've been talking to our daughter about the challenges with our grandson. So he's in school. The little one is under a year old now, but he's in school, and it's challenging because some of it's virtual and some of it's in person, and obviously the parents want to make sure that their kids are safe. So we've been working on this issue. When I voted for the CARES Act up there, bipartisan legislation, we wanted to make sure that there was sufficient money to help local communities to have funding for the schools under these very challenging circumstances. And I really empathize with those parents out there. And I was actually the president picked 32 members out of 432 members of Congress, bipartisan. I was on the reopening commission, and basically we want to get the businesses open safely, and most importantly, get the kids back in schools, make sure that they're as safe as possible, and the teachers need to be safe too.
Ms. Schroeder?
I would just say to my opponent that if he supports schools, then he needs to provide them with the relief to open. Particularly our kids in the public schools, they need support. Yes, he voted for the CARES Act, and since then he has voted against 2 relief bills that would have given our schools the support they need to open and address our communities, particularly our most disadvantaged communities here. He has also voted to block Pell Grants in the past. If you believe in education, then have your actions be consistent with your words.
Our next question is for Mr. Shabbat, and it comes from Chris Wederick of the Cincinnati Business Courier.
Mr. Shabbat, a new poll came out today from Siena College. It found that 58% of Ohio voters, they don't believe that President Trump took the adequate precautions to protect himself from the coronavirus. If you had to give him a letter grade A through F on how he responded to the coronavirus on behalf of all of us, what would that grade be?
Well, I don't give grades to the president or anybody else. I'm responsible for the people that I represent this district, and I do it to the best of my ability. And my principal responsibility in Congress, and I'm on 3 committees. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and I'm the ranking member, lead Republican on the House Small Business Committee. The past 2 Congresses, I was the chair of that committee. So my principal responsibility is to make sure that people in this community and all over the country have jobs. Because about half of the people who work in America work for a small business. About 70% of the new jobs created in America are created by America's small businesses. And they were ready to go under as a result of this COVID pandemic. So we had to take it seriously in a bipartisan manner. We passed the CARES Act, and that's what I'm focused on, making sure people have jobs. Relative to what she just said about not supporting that particular bill, $3.3 trillion it gave direct payments to illegal immigrants. She may be for that. I'm certainly not.
Ms. Schroeder?
We are really suffering as a country right now. I would give the president a failing grade on his response. This is not a political issue. You know, this is a pandemic that doesn't know who's a Democrat and who's a Republican, and none of us are safe until all of us are safe. And we need to come together as a community and as a country and put our best foot forward in responding to this. The United States is less than 5% of the world's population, and yet we are around 20% of the world's deaths due to COVID. That is because we've had a failing response. We've tried to pit public health against the economy. We haven't invested in testing and taken it seriously. We're not empowering the public health experts to give consistent guidance to the public on what measures need to be taken. Every state is on its own. The Defense Production Act, where, you know, hospitals here in Cincinnati, they needed access to personal protective equipment. And instead of having a government federally that reduced the price and got bulk equipment that went out to the states, every state was competing and raising the prices on each other by outbidding them. This is not leadership. We need to stand up as a country and say we need leaders that put people first, not politics. And we need leaders that really understand people are suffering now in our country as a result of this pandemic and investing in the public health measures to get us back and respond in the best way we can.
Mr. Shabbat, you now have 30 seconds.
Well, since Ms. Schroeder is willing to give the president grade, I'll give her a grade on her support of the Green New Deal and now denying it. I'll give her an F. This is a power grab that she favors that would basically allow the federal government to tell us what kind of houses we can live in. It essentially tells us what kind of cars we can drive, if we can even drive a car. It'll tell us where we can travel, when we can travel, even how much we can, even what we can eat. It's basically no cars, no planes, no meat, no jobs. That's what she's for. Now she denies it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shabbat. Jill Meyer from the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber has the next question for Ms. Schroeder.
Ms. Schroeder, when they controlled Congress, Republicans repealed the individual mandate that everyone have health insurance under the Affordable Care Act. Do you favor reinstating it?
I very much favor reinstating the mandate around health insurance. I'm 43 years old now. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I had a day that many Americans, many people in this community have, where everything changes in one day. And your survival is dependent on access to healthcare. It is an incredibly vulnerable feeling. And we need a community and a country that ensures universal access to healthcare to everyone. When we passed the Affordable Care Act as a country, we saw the number of uninsured go down, down, down. Under the current administration, with the removal of the mandate, with taking away funding for navigators that help people enroll and marketing that educate people on it, we've seen the number of uninsured go up, and that is an issue. We are paying for all these patients when they show up in the ER anyway. And we are a country, we are better than this. Everyone deserves access to healthcare, and I do believe that we should reinstate the mandate.
Mr. Shabbat, you now have 90 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. Every American deserves quality, affordable health care. That's what I'm for. I do believe that the American people deserved better than Obamacare. I was for an alternative plan, the American Health Care Act, which, yes, made sure that pre-existing conditions were covered. There were a lot of misleading ads that were run in the last campaign saying Republicans were against pre-existing conditions. Absolutely not true. I think every pre-existing condition ought to be covered, and that was part of our health care plan. We ought to go beyond that. We ought to do away with surprise billing. People shouldn't be surprised. We ought to have transparency so that we can compare our bills from one doctor, one prescription drug. We need to bring the prescription drugs down. I'm for HR 19, which would do just that. It would make sure seniors especially would have their prescription drugs brought down. But my opponent, again, is for the Green New Deal, which, yes, it's radical environmental stuff, but it also outlaws private insurance health care. Outlaws private insurance health care. She's for that. Now she denies that she's for the Green New Deal, but she's right on video saying not only is she for it, but it's the only thing that matters. So apparently health care really doesn't matter. Only the Green New Deal matters. So it's radical policies that she's for that would harm the people of this community. She's also for Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all, $32 trillion that would bankrupt Medicare. Very dangerous agenda she has.
Ms. Schroeder, you now have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Contrary to what my opponent is saying, I do not support the Green New Deal. I do not support Medicare for all. I very much support healthcare access to everyone and coverage for pre-existing conditions. I live with a pre-existing condition. And so do 300,000 other people in this district. And despite your words, Congressman, you have voted multiple times to take away coverage from me and those 300,000 other constituents in this district. So I suggest that you look at your vote record and better understand and better care about the consequences of your votes.
Eddie Cohen from the Urban League now has a question for Mr. Shabbat.
Mr. Shabbat, the Urban League supports efforts to address the public health crisis created by structural racism. It's never been more evident that racial justice and equity are critical to the success of our region and nation. What is the federal government's role in addressing the systemic racism that exists in our community, and what is your personal opinion about it?
Well, I certainly believe that there is racism in this country, and we ought to do everything within our power to do away with that. We ought to treat everybody equally. Everybody ought to have the same opportunities, whether that's educational opportunities, whether it's starting a business. I mentioned that I'm the ranking member of the House Small Business Committee. I'm the person right now that in Congress is trying to get a second round of PPP funding for all people, and I especially want to make it available for those in disadvantaged communities. We've set aside $25 billion of the $137 billion specifically for those that are in underserved communities and those that are at the smallest of the small businesses, those under 10. I've worked with the African American Chamber of Commerce on this issue, and I'll continue to do that because we need to make sure that everybody has an opportunity for a job to support their family, whatever their skin color.
Ms. Schroeder, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. We do have a huge problem with systemic racism in this country. I have tremendous privilege because of my white skin. I have a completely different lived experience because I'm white than if I was black. And we need to acknowledge that. And we see it in the numbers too. I mean, I'm a data person. Here in the 1st Congressional District, we have a difference in lifespan of up to 25 years, depending on what zip code you were born in. Like, that is not okay. We have differences in literacy rates, in graduation rates, in housing rates, in access to capital, differences in our criminal justice system. And so I think we need leaders that understand this and see this as a problem that we have to fix, and it's going to take all of us. It takes every one of us, the business community, the government, our community organizations, our neighborhood councils. We all have to come together and acknowledge that this is a problem and we want to work to address it. I mean, one thing I believe is that we need in our policy decisions to have a lens, not just on the overall outcome of trying to improve a graduation rate or an employment rate, but look at it broken down by race, because not only do we need to be improving the overall metric, we've got to be closing that gap, because there are gaps in every metric. You know, I'm in healthcare. I see it with our infant mortality rate that is 3 times higher for black babies than white babies in this community. And we need to look at reforming our criminal justice system so it's more rehabilitative and less punitive. And I'm open to looking at it in a holistic way and addressing these issues of systemic racism together.
Mr. Shabbat, you now have 30 seconds.
Well, you know, you're not serving the African American community who really depend upon the police to keep them safe when you undermine the police, which is what my opponent has done. She basically supported the House bill that would have taken qualified immunity away from the police officers in our community and all over the country. It would basically mean they can be sued left and right by hungry lawyers. They could go after their houses, their retirement plans. If they're in any confrontation, they could be sued left and right. She's also for doing away with cash bond, meaning more criminals on the street. So if you want to protect the minority community, you need to have police officers there and be safe.
The Business Courier's Chris Wederick with a question now for Ms. Schroeder. Excuse me.
Ms. Schroeder, both sides have run a series of negative ads against each other. In your case, Congressman Shabbat is suing you for defamation over an ad you ran that said he personally faces a grand jury investigation and got caught when it came to the loss of $123,000 from his campaign account. There's no evidence of that he's personally under investigation. Why did you run that ad?
I can say, I think it's important for voters to know that the congressman has $123,000 that went missing from his campaign, and he didn't know it until the FEC notified him. And we updated our ad as soon as the congressman confirmed that there is an FBI investigation. We updated our ad to reflect that. And I do stand by that. We're not running a single ad that is not true. And I'm happy to talk about that. But I would also say, he had a treasurer when it came out that $123,000 was missing. I can tell you, if $123,000 was missing from my campaign, I would know. I mean, that's vital resources. And he had a treasurer that signed every financial report quarterly for 8 years that put out a statement saying he didn't know he was treasurer. So, what CEO hasn't talked to their CFO for 8 years? He's been paying his son-in-law nearly $200,000 for website services that are 8 times the market rate. I think voters deserve to know about these things.
Mr. Shabbat, you now have 90 seconds.
Yeah, that's over a 10-year period, the $200,000 you're talking about, and you've claimed that there's something wrong with it. It's not unethical, it's not illegal, or anything else. In fact, it's a rehash of what the Democrats tried to say 2 years ago, and it was thrown out because it's just not true. You say I overpay for those web services. You pay twice as much as we pay for your web services. So, it's kind of absurd for you to accuse me of paying too much. And also, you've claimed that it's a clunky website. It won the award for the best congressional website in the country. So get your facts straight, Ms. Schroeder. In fact, your entire campaign has been based on a lie. I was the victim of a crime. The FBI, the Enquirer have both confirmed that. You know it, and you had to, not just did you do your ad around, you pulled your first ad. That's very unusual in politics. And you've replaced it with the same lies, just using different words. Now, why would you do that? Because you're trying to distract attention from where you stand on the issues. You know that if people find out where you stand, and now you're denying the Green New Deal, which is absurd because you're on videotape saying that not only do you support it, but it's the only thing that matters. If people find out on those things, there's no way you have any chance of winning this race. These are dangerous policies, undermining our police, a radical agenda, AOC's agenda. It's really disappointing that you're lying and attacking the victim of a crime for political gain. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Ms. Schroeder, you now have 30 seconds.
I find it interesting that the congressman, I understand he doesn't want us to talk about the $123,000 that's missing from his campaign, but I will say this is a gentleman who has spent 24 years running negative, intentionally misleading ads against his opponents. And even now, he has yet to run a single positive ad. He's not running one truthful ad about my campaign. And 2 years ago, he cared a lot about candidate accountability. He said the culture of corruption starts, quote, at the top. And I would just ask him if he still believes that.
Jill Meyer from the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber is up now with a question for Mr. Shabbat.
Mr. Shabbat, the Cincinnati region would not have experienced population growth over the last decade without immigration. Immigrants are critical to the growth of our region and the success of our businesses. What is your plan to move the conversation on immigration in a productive direction in the next Congress?
Yeah, immigration is absolutely critical to every community, including ours here in Cincinnati. And I'm for immigration, legal immigration. but we're a sovereign nation, and we have every right to determine who comes here and under what circumstances. We shouldn't have people try to come here the right way, and then somebody cuts in front of the line if they come here illegally, and that's just not right. It's not fair to those people. So we do need to have logical, common sense immigration policies, and I'm for that. Now I've got to go back to something that Ms. Schroeder just said. She said I haven't run one positive ad. A lot of this stuff she's saying tonight just isn't true. We have one of our positive ads is Jim Neal. Who's Jim Neal? He's our sheriff, our Democratic sheriff. Very positive ad. He's saying that he's opposed to the violence and the radicalism, doesn't name you by name, and says he endorses me supporting him. So our Democratic sheriff and the FOP support me, not you.
Ms. Schroeder, you now have 90 seconds.
Thanks. I'll direct the question around immigration. I mean, our strength as a country is our diversity, right? We are built on, we are a nation of immigrants that have come here. And I think what's really upsetting to me as someone who's watched this play out, that I think we can be welcoming to immigrants, and at the same time we can be pro-border security and preventing violent criminals from getting in. And we have too many folks in our political system, like my opponent, that try to paint these in two separate corners. Like, let's be welcoming while we also have strong border security. I do believe in comprehensive immigration reform. That used to not be a partisan thing. We need to get back to that. I believe a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers. I also believe we need to invest in our court system to process these cases so that people aren't languishing in the court system for years and years and years. And I believe that we cannot be separating families. I mean, there was just an article that came out last night about these continued practices of family separation. I am a mother, I'm a parent. Like, it is not good to be separating children from their parents. It's not who we are as a country. And the other thing I'll say is someone who spent 12 years working in global public health. I lived overseas for 2 years. Like, there are ways that we can also, as a parent, people don't want to come to this country unless it's a last resort. And so let's invest and partner with those countries so that mothers and fathers and parents feel like they don't have to leave and seek refuge somewhere else.
Mr. Shabbat, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, Ms. Schroeder told you some of the things that she feels about immigration. A lot of that's nice. Now let me tell you the things about immigration she didn't tell you. Remember open borders? You remember at the Democratic debates when they were asked, who's for decriminalizing, meaning letting people just come in here, and they all raised their hand. Ms. Schroeder, if she were there, she would have been right with them raising her hand. She's for open borders. It means your tax dollars are going to pay for people who aren't citizens, who aren't paying any taxes. She's for sanctuary cities too. That's dangerous.
Eddie Cohen from the Urban League, your question now for Ms. Schroeder.
Ms. Schroeder, data has shown that nearly 90% of minority and women-owned businesses did not get access to PPP dollars. Recognizing the importance of growing minority capital and minority-owned businesses in our region, what role should the federal government play in increasing the flow of capital and other funding to minority-owned businesses? And what would you do as a member of Congress to break down those walls to obtaining capital?
Thanks, Eddie. I really believe that we need to strengthen access to capital for our minority businesses. We have a really exciting activities going on with minority entrepreneurs in this community, with Mortar. And I think we need to have a federal government that sees that and invests in that and is channeling resources to that. And when you have a program like PPP that is meant to help all small businesses, but as you just shared, minority businesses didn't benefit in the same way that others did. And so we have to learn from that. In this, if we are able, we have got to get additional relief, and expanded PPP has to be part of that. We should be looking at ways to proactively ensure that minority businesses do have full access to that. It should be a separate metric that is broken out so that we are able to make sure that we are addressing those gaps.
Mr. Shabbat, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, as the ranking member of the House Small Business Committee, I work on a daily basis on making sure that those in the underserved communities, minority communities, do have access to capital. Now, it's not where it needs to be. We need to continue the fight. That's why I have worked consistently with the African American Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic American Chamber of Commerce, to make sure that they do have access and did have access to the PPP program. We did run into some challenges with the PPP program because essentially a lot in the minority community didn't have long-term relationships with lenders, credit unions, bankers, et cetera. So that's something we had to continue to work on. I'm working on that right now, and I've worked very closely with the minority community on that. I'll tell you something that isn't going to benefit the minority community, though, and that's her radical policies when it comes to the Green New Deal. Why do I say that? Well, you, for example, would have a guaranteed income even for people who refuse to work. Think of that. Your tax dollars go into folks who say, I'm not going to work, just send me money. And it's a guaranteed amount. Every American gets a guaranteed amount. How do you pay for all this? $93 trillion over 10 years. Your taxes going up to 70%, $70,000 a year. She's for that. She denies it now, which is absolutely incredible because she's on videotape saying she's for it. But that doesn't help anybody, minority community or anybody else.
Ms. Schroeder, you now have 30 seconds.
The role of government is to ensure that everybody has a fair shot and to root out injustices, economic injustices included. And so I do think there's a role of the federal government to invest in minority communities and businesses that haven't had their fair share of this. And as a member of Congress, my job will be to bring resources to this community, to work tirelessly every day to do that. And especially to our most disadvantaged communities. And I think that's something that we've been grossly lacking for the last 24 years.
The Business Courier's Chris Wederick is next with a question for Mr. Shabbat.
Congressman, over the last several years, our region has experienced several extreme rain events which have caused landslides and slippage of Cincinnati's hillsides, requiring a very expensive mitigation project on Columbia Parkway, which, as you know, is a key thoroughfare. City officials have said that the global climate change is a cause for this. Do you believe in human-caused global climate change? And if so, what should the federal government do about it?
Oh, I think it's certainly part of what's going on out there. As was already mentioned, I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent. I want our kids and our grandkids to drink clean water. I want them to breathe clean air. And I do think we want to reduce emissions out there if that's having an impact on the environment. And we need to improve the infrastructure in our community and communities all over the country. And there are some people who are for reasonable things, like doing things that make sense when it comes to climate change, when it comes to our environment, and I think that's my category. And then there's the category of those with AOC and the socialists, the folks that basically march around with their little red book and their comrades doing this, probably as a little green book, and it's the only thing that matters. Think of that. Healthcare doesn't matter. Taxes don't matter. You know, really nothing matters but the Green New Deal. I mean, it's radical stuff to deal with climate change or global warming, and it's absurd.
Ms. Schroeder, you now have 90 seconds.
Thanks for bringing this up, Chris, because I get to clarify my position on this, which the congressman seems to think he knows better than I do. The comment that he took out of context was that I said, if we don't address climate change, nothing else will matter, because if we don't have our climate, our world, our globe, none of us will be here. It is a huge issue in this community. As you mentioned, we've had these epic level 100-year floods over the last couple of years here in Cincinnati. I had in my basement at one of these last ones, I had a waterfall. I went down the basement, I was like, what is that noise? It was a waterfall coming in. We are spending over $30 million as a city on road repair and landslides. We have got to have leaders that acknowledge this isn't Democrat, it's not Republican. It's nonpartisan. We need to invest in addressing climate change. And I do not support the Green New Deal, despite what my opponent seems to think. I do support, re-entering the Paris Climate Accord, and I support setting firm, clear targets of net zero emissions by 2050. And I'm a business person, I have an MBA. I think we need to look at markets do work, and we have to put a price on carbon and sit at the table with businesses and with governments and communities to figure out how do we incentivize the right decisions here. And so, yes, I do support addressing climate change, and I have reasonable measures for that. And I would just ask the congressman to please clarify what his reasonable measures are that he supports.
Mr. Shabbat, you have 30 seconds.
Nice try, Ms. Schroeder. She's now doing just the same thing that Joe Biden did the other night. He's on camera saying he's for the Green New Deal back in the Democratic primaries when he's running against Bernie and he's running against Elizabeth Warren. And so she was back there advocating for the Green New Deal, saying nothing else matters. Now, well, it sounds like she's reversed her position. But she's willing to risk your jobs to reduce the temperature by about a degree in 100 years. I'm not willing to do that.
Chamber President Jill Meyer now has a question for Ms. Schroeder.
Ms. Schroeder, how would you view your role as a member of Congress in supporting the nearly 100 local governments that exist within the 1st District?
Thank you. I'm a partner. I think your role in government alone, we can't accomplish anything. I mean, this is who I've always been as in my professional career. The way you get things done is by building relationships. So for me, I would want to have strong relationships at the state level, in the state house, at the county level here, and with the city governments and municipalities throughout the entire 1st District. And my job would be to be a doer, to open doors, to knock on doors up in DC and help bring resources and investment to this community. My job would be to listen. The local governments here know what they need. They are talking to their citizens and constituents every day. So my job would be to listen and work hard and show up and work my tail off for this community and as a partner for those local governments. And I see that as a critical role and something that's really been lacking under our current leadership in the federal government.
Mr. Shabbat, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. Ms. Schroeder has no elected experience ever. I represented this community for 5 years on Cincinnati City Council. And if you know the city of Cincinnati, there were 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 1 Charterite. We had to work together. And as a county commissioner, I served there almost 5 years as well. You have the entire county, basically, that you're responsible for. And for the past 24 years, I've worked in the United States House of Representatives. And I've made it my mission to make sure that we're in contact with all our local elected officials, and not just the elected officials, but the people that do the real hard work, the fire chiefs and especially the firefighters, our police officers, the people that are out there, the thin blue line that are keeping us from chaos out there. Her policies are just the opposite. Rather than assist those police officers, what she wants to do is to allow them to be sued, doing away with what's called qualified immunity. That means that they could be sued willy-nilly by attorneys, and police officers by their very nature. Fortunately, they're not involved in shootings all the time, but they are involved in physical encounters. They have to go out on DUIs late at night. They have to separate domestic violence people. So oftentimes that's what they do. If they could be sued every time that happens, and that's what she's for, who would ever want to be a police officer? We wouldn't have safe communities.
Ms. Schroeder, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll just share an example in my professional career of how I have worked with others. On the Board of Health, we had an issue where we weren't able to fill all of our dental positions, and there are so many children and adults in this community that are suffering and living in pain because they do not have the dental care that they need. And the reason we couldn't fill them was the salaries were not competitive. We paid less than all the regional public health centers. I led an effort to show the data that if we paid competitive wages, we could fill these jobs. Nobody wanted to touch it. I put it together. Thank you.
Urban League CEO Eddie Cohen has a question now for Mr. Shabbat.
Mr. Shabbat, the Food and Drug Administration proposed guidelines about the emergency release of a coronavirus vaccine. Those guidelines could delay the release of the vaccine until after Election Day. And the White House has tried to block those. Do you favor the actions taken by President Trump concerning the vaccine's release? And do you believe when a vaccine is released, it will be safe?
Oh, I think it should absolutely not be released until we're assured that it is safe, and you can be guaranteed that that's what's going to happen. That's what the experts will do, and that's who we ought to be relying upon, and that's the experts. We need to defeat this virus. As I mentioned earlier, it's killed about 200,000 of our fellow citizens, and it's going up. And so we need to defeat it. That's why I voted for the CARES Act. That's why I voted for subsequent legislation on that. Now, the one that Pelosi put out there was a $3.3 trillion bill, and my opponent already attacked me for not voting for that. Would you have voted for a $3.3 trillion bill that not only gave direct payments to people here illegally, so taking your tax dollars and giving them to illegal immigrants? That's what she's for. She just attacked me for that before. And then the other thing, it took away our rights, as we do in Ohio when we vote, to have to show a voter ID. that would be more fraud if you didn't have that. She's for that. She just attacked me for it.
Ms. Schroeder, you have 90 seconds.
We need to empower our public health experts. I very much support following the best scientific expertise and the FDA in what needs to be done to prove safety and efficacy, because we are only going to beat this pandemic if we have a good vaccine that is safe and efficacious and the people trust and believe in it. So we should not be rushing it. You know, this is my background. I've spent 15 years working in healthcare, 12 years in global public health. And this isn't rocket science. So we empower our public health experts. We support the FDA and the CDC to ensure we have a safe, effective vaccine, and then we listen to our clinical experts and we ensure that everyone gets access to that vaccine, particularly communities that are most vulnerable first. And so I very much support that, and it's something that I've spent my life's work in. I've spent 12 years leading global programs to reduce mortality rates in kids, and have led a program that increased the number of kids getting correct treatment from 1.2 million to 55 million kids. And it's estimated that this work has saved the lives of 76,000 kids. So I appreciate that the congressman thinks it doesn't matter unless you've had government experience, but I've also had real world experience using my MBA to solve public health challenges. And I think that might be helpful in a time that we are in right now.
Mr. Shabbat, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, I guess you did have a little government service because you were the head of the Finance Committee down at the Board of Health, and you mismanaged that. There was scandal there. Essentially, you ran up the debt to $2.7 million, which healthcare workers said hurt the city's pandemic response. And the taxpayers are going to be paying for all these lawsuits. So the one job you did have in public service at the city, you screwed up.
And Chris Wederick is up now with a question for Ms. Schroeder.
Ms. Schroeder, this is your first run for elected office, and you don't have a voting record. So I want to ask you about one of the most consequential votes in the House in the past term. If you had been a member in December, would you have voted to impeach President Trump on either charge, abuse of power or obstruction of Congress?
I would have voted to impeach the president. I think, you know, there was evidence there, and I think we need a president that stands up for our country first. I am deeply concerned. For me, it's not about partisan. I'm not an ideologue. I'm not a particularly political person. I am a doer and a problem solver. And that's why I'm running for Congress, because I think for too long we have had people that go there to play politics, to be partisan, like my opponent here. You know, he may have been a different person 24 years ago, but he has become everything that is what frustrates us and what's wrong about Washington. All this inflammatory rhetoric and irresponsible language that's pulling us apart and trying to intentionally spread lies. So I'm just going to be, my commitment to the people of this district is to always vote with my conscience and what is best for this community, and what I think the right thing to do is, that's what I was raised, is to always do the right thing.
Mr. Shabbat, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. She says she's not an ideologue, but she's right in there with AOC and the radicals in supporting the Green New Deal, which basically is no planes, no cars, no meat, no jobs. I mean, it's pretty radical stuff. It's lunacy, to be honest with you. Now, relative to the impeachment, yes, I voted not to impeach because I thought it was absurd and it didn't even come close to high crimes and misdemeanors, so focused accordingly. But I'm focused on what actually impacts the people in this community. And that's the PPP program that I crafted and implemented and got so many jobs here. Saved more jobs in our community than any other district in Ohio. Let me tell you maybe a couple of those jobs just to tell you who we're talking about in real terms. I was out at Schmoes Automotive out in Bridgetown. It's right down the street from St. Al's. And they were going to go under. What happened is the owner died. Dan died. His wife was trying to keep it going. I talked to both her and Barry, their manager. They wouldn't be in business if it wasn't for this, and most importantly, all their employees and the families that they supported. Let me tell you about another one, Sweetheart Cafe. Judy's the owner out there. She said, we don't make a whole lot of money, but we basically sell happiness and good food. A lot of seniors go there. She said they couldn't have survived without the PPP program. They have great scones there, by the way, as well. Another one is iSpace in Sharonville. They have space camps for kids, and it's a great place.
Ms. Schroeder, you have 30 seconds.
We need leaders who are in DC representing the interests of this community, not looking out for their career as the primary metric. And I think we have a congressman here who's taken over $1 million from pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies, and he's voted against negotiating on prescription drugs. So that is a basic thing. I've led efforts globally in my work to help reduce the cost of drugs. And he's someone here who's voted against negotiating on prescription drugs. We would save, if we just did it on the top 200 drugs in this country, we would save $342 billion. So for someone that claims to be for tax savings and saving the people, we need leaders that have the moral courage to stand up.
And we have limited time left, so I'm actually going to be asking the next question. You will both have 1 minute to respond. It's a broad question, and that question tonight is, how can we restore civility in American politics? Mr. Shabbat, you will get the first crack at this question.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to do that. There's too much finger pointing, and I guess this debate shows a bit of that as well. But I actually have been pretty successful in getting things done. In fact, UVA, University of Virginia, and Vanderbilt did a study on who are the most effective members of Congress, and the last 2 times that they've done that, I've come in the top 5% for getting things done, being effective. How do I do that? Because I work with Democrats. I'm a pretty conservative Republican. I work with Nydia Velázquez, who's the chairwoman of the committee. I treated her well when she was my ranking member, and now she treats me well. We get a lot done, probably more done on that committee than any committee in Congress. And you can get things done if you are civil and people trust you and they know that your word is good. I even worked with Karen Bass recently, who was almost Joe Biden's vice president. We just passed legislation in the Foreign Affairs Committee just this past week. So tell the truth and work with people. It works.
Ms. Schroeder, you have a minute now.
Yeah, I appreciate this question. It's part of the reason I'm running. I think we need people that listen to each other, that respect each other, and we need to elect different people if we want different outcomes. You know, I'm sitting here with my opponent tonight. I've told him multiple times my position on an issue, and either he's listening or doesn't believe me. That's not civility. Civility is using words that aren't inflammatory, not intentionally spreading misinformation, and using irresponsible language and pulling our country apart. There is more that unites us and divides us as a country. I love this country and I love this community. You know, I'm from a 5th generation Cincinnati family on both sides. And those are the values that we need to see represented in our leadership. And so I do fundamentally believe it's really important to elect people that not just say they have these values, but show them through their actions and in their reputation as a person.
As we mentioned earlier, each of the candidates has 2 minutes for a closing statement. And Mr. Shabbat, we begin tonight with you.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for watching this debate this evening. And in these challenging times, the fundamental choice this election is which candidate will best deliver results for the hardworking people in this district, get us through this pandemic, this challenge that we face, and help us to emerge stronger on the other side. There's a clear contrast between my record of delivering results, including securing more Paycheck Protection Program, PPP support for small businesses than any other district in Ohio, and my opponent's campaign, which is entirely based on a blatant lie meant to hide from the voters that she would stand with Nancy Pelosi and the socialist squad to advance an extreme agenda that would really devastate Ohio families. While my opponent focuses on her campaign on false attacks and dangerous ideas, I'm working hard every day for the people of Cincinnati and Hamilton County and Warren County. The PPP program that I helped craft brought nearly $3 billion and saved over 250,000 jobs right here in this district. But people are still hurting. And we continue to face unprecedented challenges. That's why I'm working closely with Governor DeWine and medical experts and first responders to keep our communities safe and get people back to work as quickly and safely, and I want to emphasize safely, as possible, and why I'll continue to fight for support for our community. To me, doing this job has always been about finding consensus and getting things done for the people that I have the honor of representing. That's why I'm also working on sensible police reform that seeks common ground and respect and strengthens all of us. So I will continue to do what I've done in the past to try to help you all. Thank you for listening this evening. God bless you all. God bless your families, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Shabbat. Ms. Schroeder, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
As a cancer survivor, healthcare is personal to me. It's why I'm running. My opponent has voted over 15 times to take healthcare away with no alternative plan. And it's not okay to play politics with people's lives. As you have seen here tonight, my opponent is trying to paint me into someone I'm not. He wants you to believe that I'm some extremist, and it's just not who I am. While he votes 95% of the time with President Trump, there is no one I agree with 95% of the time. You can ask my husband, John. Steve Shabbat has been representing this district for 24 years. We have given him 12 chances to deliver results for this community. I'm asking for one. We have so many real and pressing problems in this country right now, and we're not going to solve them with the status quo. For too long, we've been electing people that divide us and tear us apart. And I believe the majority of Americans and the majority of people in this community want leaders that bring us together and get things done. And I am a low ego mom. I know how to de-escalate. I do it every day with my 5- and 7-year-old. And that's the attitude I want to bring to Congress. I'm also a public health leader with a track record of results, reducing drug prices, expanding treatment services without ever increasing taxes. And in Congress, I will fight tirelessly for this community, for healthcare, for education, for economic opportunity. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight. For anyone who is interested in learning more about me, you can read about me at kateforcongress.com. And thank you so much. I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you, Ms. Schroeder. That is all the time that we have tonight. We appreciate the candidates giving their time this evening to help you at home make an informed decision when you vote. And we want to say thank you to Chris, to Jill, and Eddie for their wonderful and very thoughtful questions. We also want to take this time to remind you that early voting in Hamilton and Warren counties began yesterday. If you're voting by mail and haven't requested a ballot, you need to do that soon. We hope that you will stay with Local 12 tonight for another debate, that one between vice presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. That's coming up tonight at 9 o'clock. And we'll have a wrap up of both events tonight on Local 12 News live at 11. I'll be there alongside my co-anchor Paula Toti. And our thanks to the Cincinnati Business Courier and the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber for their help bringing this debate for you. And thank you for watching. We'll see you again tonight at 11.